Okay, whenever you use the thread station, make sure that you don't have to take the spool out. Leave the spool inside. You're going to take the end. Your feet are going to stay the same, but you're going to pull until your elbow is straight, and that's how much thread you need. You cut your thread, don't cut to the plastic. You can get close, but not that close. Put your thread right there. Grab the two like this, and then you have to use not weak hands, but like real strong grips, and then that should cut thread right through. And make sure that when you're spinning it, it doesn't accidentally make other things spin so that they get all wound up. If they do, then I need you to take the thread and wind it back up so it's not a huge mess for other people to clean up after you. Right, so I've threaded my needle, and I want to make sure that so here's my needle end. I want to make sure that the ends are even, and when they're even I need to tie a knot, and I'm going to do the balloon knot where I kind of create a circle here. I put the ends inside the circle and I pull tight, and that's not going to be a good enough knot. It's going to go straight through the fabric, so I need to make sure I get 3 of those. And when I do my second one, it's important that the knot goes on top of the other knot. So don't go fast, go slow, and make sure it lands right where you want it to land. And if it doesn't, you're going to have to try and move your knot around until it lands right where you want it to land. So make sure you're in control of your knot, and then it should look something like that. You'll notice that I have this all lined up, and this is 1 inch. This is a 1/2 inch, and I've made sure that this is a 1/2 inch all the way around, and how I did that was I put these marks using a pen like this, and so it's a 1/2 inch all the way around, and I went back to where my marks were and I just drew this in until it was all the way around. I put X's where I wanted my openings to go. And the opening has to be large enough that your fingers can fit in there when it's time to flip it over. Look at 2 different projects. This student, you want to put your pins going towards the center so you don't poke yourself while you're sewing. But this person pinned theirs down and they were able to go all the way around. You can tell it's even on both sides, so it's no problem. This student did not put any pins down at all. And while they were sewing, they started off with nice small stitches here, but then their stitches got really big, and you'll notice that these corners are 90 degree, except this is a shortcut corner. You want the 90 degree corner so your finished product will look better. Well, this student did the big huge stitch, and they even did a shortcut stitch right there. But because they didn't pin it down, as they were working, their fabric moved, and it's all uneven. And there's nothing you can do to fix it. What you have to do is just rip it apart and start again. Okay, we're going to take a look at some work for some students. I keep telling you not to have big stitches, and this is what happens when you have big stitches. These are so huge that your beans can actually pop out of them. And that's why we don't want the big stitch. It just doesn't look like a nice final product. Here's a student who had nice stitching over here. Their hidden stitch wasn't very good, but they have holes down here because when they stitch, they were supposed to stitch through both sides of the fabric, and for some reason he missed and only stitched on one side of the fabric, leaving this big huge gaping hole. And it happened several times, and he had to go back and try and restitch it, but he didn't know how to do the hidden stitch, so his stitches are showing here. Okay, so I have taken my fabric, and it is even on all sides around here, and you've noticed I've pointed the pins towards the center, so while I'm sewing it won't poke me, but if it's over here it might poke me while I'm working. And I've gone ahead and I've knotted my needle, so I'm going to go where the X is, and I'm going to test and make sure that I have whoops, the knot went through. So I need to put a bigger knot on there. Go ahead and test my knot again. and it's not going through. But you'll notice that it has a little bump right there, so I'm just going to pull my thread and make it even. And I'm going to start my stitches. And to do my stitches, I'm just pulling my needle back and forth so I can get the smallest stitch I possibly can. I just keep going back and forth. And when you have enough on it, don't wait too long. You only want to do a few stitches and then go ahead and pull it through. So when you get to the corner, you want to make sure that you do a straight. You don't want to do a diagonal cut. You want to make sure that you go straight that way and then straight this way. That will give you a better 90-degree corner when you flip your beanbag over. And if you get a little piece like this where there's a little extra thread sticking up, you need to stop, pull this apart, and just pull one side or the other to find out which one is loose thread. And then you see how it's uneven? Go ahead and balance it out again. Let's say the bell just rang and your pins aren't attached to anything. You just throw them in here, and then here's your needle and you just kind of throw it in here. That's not a great idea, because sometimes when you pull your stuff out, they accidentally also fall out, and then you walk away and you've lost your needle. You have a loose needle, instead of just throwing it into your bag and it may get lost, then you want to just, even if it's just a couple of stitches with a knot in it, it's safer to have a knot in. Just put your needle like that. Make sure that you have your pins here and then you can put this in and put it in your bin before you leave. Okay, let's take a look at this one. This student got started really well. They did a nice 90-degree corner where they went straight this way and then straight that way, but then they started doing big stitches, and then they did a shortcut corner. They didn't go at a straight 90-degree angle. That's going to mess up their final product. They won't be able to pull their corners out well. It'll be rounded. And then they started doing these big stitches. And then how are they going to tie a knot? Because they stitched all the way to the very end and there's not enough room. How do I tie a knot? You have to tie a knot, because this is what's going to happen if you don't. You're going to clip this as close as you can so you have the most amount of thread. And this is now a loose needle. So you need to, before you even play with this, you need to go and get more thread on it. So you need to do that. But if you don't tie a knot, all your work gets undone and you have to redo it. So the best thing you can do is to grab your thread, and it's too tiny to tie a knot. Remember, you need at least this much thread to tie the knot. So you can pull all your work out until you have this much thread so you can tie a knot. Or another trick is make sure that all the gathers are out. And just push it like this. Make sure everything lays flat. Okay, and then you're going to pull this until you have enough space to do a knot, but you don't know where your knot should go, because if it's too close you'll have all these ugly gathers. So you need to flatten this out, and hopefully your knot will land where you need it to go. Just keep pushing it out this way. And it looks like that knot's going to land a little too close, so I'm going to try and open it up and move that knot out of the way a little. And then you want to be in control of your knot and make sure that it lands right where you want it to land. So I'm going to use my pin here to put it closer to the fabric. Okay, now I have a marker. You can see my knot is right there. Now when I finish, now that knot will probably go through the fabric, so I need to make it bigger. So I'm just going to twist it around my finger, put it into the circle that I created. But I don't want that knot to land just anywhere. I need that knot to land on the first one. So I'm going to move, go slowly, take my time, and move my knot so that it lands directly on the other one. And usually 3 knots is what it takes, so I'm going to do another third knot. Make sure it lands where I need it to land, and then I'm going to push all my gathers out. And there's a little bit of a wrinkle, but hey, that's not too bad. Now it's very important that you don't sew all the way across there, because if you sew all the way across, how do you flip it over? Okay, so now I'm going to create my knot here at the X so that I do have an opening. I'm going to go around and create a circle, and I'm going to go over the top of that thread to fulfill the circle, and then put my needle up inside, and you will notice that I can control my knot wherever it intersects with the thread. That's where my knot is going to be, and I can move my knot anywhere I want. The easiest way to do this is to open up my fingers here until my knot lands right on the fabric. So make it a little bit bigger so you guys can see. So I can control my knot wherever I want it to land. Well, I want it to land right there on the fabric, and I just open my fingers here. When the knot lands and intersects right there on the X, I'm going to hold it, and I'm not going to lift it up, because if I lift it up, you'll see my knot moved. I don't want my knot to be there. So I have to open it up again, get it to land right where I want it, and I hold it down until I cannot pull. If I can't pull anymore, then I check my knot, and you can tell that it landed right through the fabric. Now, one knot is not enough. It'll probably, if I pulled really hard here, if you want to test your knots, you can pull, and if your knot goes through the fabric, you know that's not gonna hold. So I'm gonna do 3 knots. That was my first one. Here's my second. Here's my third knot. Okay, and then to test your knot, you always want to pull right here and see if your knot goes through the fabric. It's tested, it's done. And when you cut, you don't want to cut on this side of the knot, otherwise all your work will come out. So you want to cut on this side of the knot so the knot stays with the fabric. Thank you to all my wonderful Quest students who helped me create this instructional video.